Hello everyone, tonight we are standing beside a well that was never quite dry and never quite empty. The air smells like wet stone and burnt cedar. Behind you, the door you came through no longer exists. And just above the moss-lined edge of the stonework on the inner wall, where no sunlight reaches a single handprint, glows faintly in the dark. It's too small for an adult, too old to belong to anyone living. You are here, and you probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The print is damp. That's the first thing you notice. You've brought your own torch down, modern, rechargeable, proudly waterproof, and you test the theory. The moment you shine your light onto the moss-ringed shaft of the well, it recoils. Not in brightness, but in temperature. As if the stone itself winces. The well goes down forever, or so the locals say. And at the lip, there it is again. That same small handprint, reapplied, just as it was yesterday and the day before. You whisper, though no one's near who keeps touching this. And your own voice answers from the depth who keeps asking. You laugh lightly. A researcher's laugh. You're here for a field survey. The village hired you, sort of. Said your equipment looked expensive. Said you'd understand old things. You do. In theory. But your degrees are better with pottery shards than with spectral dampness. Your training never involved stone wells that grow colder as dawn breaks. Still, here you are. The stones under your boots are roughly cut. Ancient, maybe Iron Age, though that's generous. Some say this well dates back even earlier to the Hallstatt culture. The inner walls bear the weathering of over 500 years. And near the waterline, if you squint, there's a carving of a sun with no rays, just a circle. Smoothed down like it gave up shining. That's not the strange part. The strange part of the print. The shape. The way it curls, and not flat but clawed, almost gripping. 5 fingers, long, uneven, with the tiniest inward smeared in, like someone pushed upward from the dark and couldn't quite hold on. You scan the area. No footsteps in the mud. No handprints on the outer rim. And yet by the time the sun rises, the wall will be dry again. By nightfall, a fresh print will return. Always in the same place. Always with that desperate curl. Some say it's just capillary action. Groundwater leaching through the seams. But you've marked it now, cleaned it, taped the area, and still it returns. A different shape each time. One morning it even formed a pair side by side, as if whoever it was had grown lonely. A nearby legend says a girl once fell in and lived. For 3 days she called from the bottom. Then she stopped. The villagers said it was mercy. Her body was never recovered. The well was sealed for a generation, then quietly reopened when the droughts came. These days it's more symbol than source. The water isn't potable anymore anyway, too much iron, too much memory. One elderly woman told you last week over boiled roots and honey wine that the girl climbed back out eventually, but wrong. You asked her to explain. She just smiled and offered you more wine. She still wants to see Dawn, the woman whispered, but Dawn won't let her. That was joke number 1 in case you missed it. Tonight, you lower a microphone into the shaft. You've done this before with ancient ruins in Anatolia, used acoustic mapping to identify sub-chambers. You're hoping for echoes, maybe rats, anything real. What you get instead is breath, shallow, wet, and steady. You freeze. There are 2 explanations. The first, the mic is malfunctioning. The second, you're not alone. Some researchers still argue whether prehistoric wells like these were ever just for water. In Celtic sites, similar shafts were used in ritual. A connection between worlds, a voice between earth and sky. Offerings were lowered, not raised. Children's toys, carved wooden masks, even a Roman coin with the face scratched off. Things not meant to return. You've begun hearing other things now too. Not voices, not exactly, just the sense of them. A tug behind your thoughts like language forgotten mid-sentence. Last night something tapped your shoulder as you slept. You dreamt of red moss forming words. You shrug it off. Again, that's joke number 2. Tonight, you sleep beside the well. You've set up your tent facing it. You've placed the motion camera directly across from the handprint. No one's going to sneak in. You've even scattered chalk across the perimeter. Dry chalk. Any footprint will show. And then you wake. It's still night. The tent flap is closed. The air smells faintly of rust. You step out. The handprint is gone. Your breath fogs. It shouldn't, it's summer. The air is suddenly 20 degrees colder. The grass is wet. The chalk is gone, washed away. A perfect circle of dry soil surrounds the well now, but only within a 3-foot radius, as if something rose up and gently patted the ground dry. You approach the stone wall and raise your own hand, just to test. You touch where the print was, and your fingers come away dry. There's something deeply wrong about that, because you watch dew gather on every other surface. Except this one. You decide to sleep again, but not before checking your camera. The battery is drained. You'd charged it fully. A glitch, maybe. Or magnetic interference. But that doesn't explain the final frame before shutdown, your own sleeping body, and behind you a child's silhouette, pressing both hands to the stone. That's joke number 3. Hopefully. In the morning, the sun tries to break through the mist, but only half-heartedly. The fog curls low over the grass like it's trying not to disturb anything. Birds sing in hesitant chirps as if someone told them to whisper today. You emerge from your tent with the dry taste of copper on your tongue. Somewhere in your sleep, you bit down too hard on nothing. The well is silent, no handprint, no silhouette, no apology. The stone looks smug. You begin your documentation. You're a professional after all. That's what professionals do. Even if they're trembling a little. You transcribe everything into your journal. You log the time, the temperature, the stillness. You sketch the stone circle note, the missing chalk. Write no visible handprint may have evaporated. May have. It's always nice to pretend uncertainty makes things safer. You decide to test another method. This time you leave a strip of paper across the stone, lightly taped, dusted with charcoal powder to catch any trace. You add a drop of resin on the edges to harden it against weather or tampering. A child's prank. A nightbird brushing past. You're almost hoping it's something embarrassingly ordinary. It won't be. Because at precisely 5:37 a.m. the next day, a single pressure dips into the paper. Not a full hand, just a fingertip. The charcoal scatters outward like it's afraid to stay close. You check the footage, nothing moves, but at the exact moment the charcoal blooms, the microphone picks up a laugh. Short, wet, unchildlike. You do not laugh back. That's your first mistake today. Later in the village archive, such as it is, one shelf in a locked cabinet inside a cafe, you find a story written in fading ink on sheep parchment, a letter unsigned from the 17th century. It mentions a well at the edge of the woods. One that refuses burial. The phrase is odd. You reread it 5 times. The writer warns of prints that repeat themselves despite erasure and a girl with her fingers on backward, always backward. It could be a metaphor, or just a very imaginative day in 1684. Still, you copy the letter word for word into your journal. You also take a rubbing from the well's inner stone beneath the handprint site. You're not an epigrapher, but something about the faint carvings troubles you. They're too worn to read fully, but a few shapes stand out: concentric spirals, a sideways tree, and what looks like a child's open mouth. For context, the spiral is one of the oldest symbols in prehistoric Europe. It appears in Neolithic tombs in Ireland, often marking portals or transitions. Some say they represent the path of the sun or the soul's journey. Others say they're just doodles. Some researchers still argue whether these symbols meant anything at all, or whether meaning came later imposed by wishful descendants trying to tidy up the past. That's your scholarly doubt if you're keeping track. That night, the print returns again. Full palm this time, deeper. You don't see it form, you just look up and it's already there. The fingers are longer now. The smear below the thumb suggests downward movement, like whoever touched the wall was slipping or being pulled. You run your fingers along the outer rim of the stone. It's colder than before, not freezing, not painful, but thoughtful, like the temperature of a cave that remembers being full. You sit at the edge and speak aloud foolishly. What do you want? A single acorn drops from the tree behind you. You flinch. That's joke number 1 for this section. Enjoy it. They'll get darker. You spend the following day mapping the surrounding soil. Something's off about the patterns. A ring of mushrooms you hadn't noticed before is sprouting near the base of the nearest elm. You test one. It's real, earthy, slightly sweet smell. But you don't touch them. You don't even like mushrooms in soup, much less those growing in a perfect circle around the well. A folkloric note for your journal. In many cultures, mushroom rings, fairy circles, mark places where time thins, where the dead dance, where the living should not stand too long. In Slavic stories, children who fall into such rings are returned with their voices backward. In Welsh legends, the fair folk leave handprints on stones, where they watch mortals sleep. You note all this, then pause. Backtrack. Handprints. Watching sleep. You didn't dream last night, not because nothing came, but because something stood too close. Too close for dreams. Too quiet for waking. You write none of this down. Instead, you eat dry biscuits and read aloud to yourself from the field manual. It's a chapter on soil stratigraphy. It does not help. Later, you try recording your own voice, just to establish a baseline. You say simple things. My name is. You leave it out here, the date is. You're not sure anymore. This is an audio test. You play it back. The first 2 lines are fine. The third says, this is an exit. You do not remember saying that. Joke number 2. A light one. Haha. At dusk, you mark the well again. This time you use fingerprinting powder and set up 2 lights and a mirror. The mirror faces the well from behind the tent. You're trying to catch the angle of the hand as it appears. Or rather, how it appears. You don't catch it in the mirror, but you do catch yourself. At 3:12 a.m., the camera captures your own body standing barefoot by the well, one hand raised, pressing into the stone. You're asleep. Or not moving. Your eyes are closed. Your face looks peaceful and your palm isn't yours. That's not metaphor. The handprint you leave behind has 6 fingers. You check in the morning. It's there. A 6th finger longer than the others, curling downward towards the moss. You laugh. That's mistake number 2. And joke number 3. Hope you're still laughing. You stop touching the well. That seems like a good first step. You don't announce this decision aloud, of course. That would imply someone is listening, and you're not sure anymore whether that's better or worse than the alternative. The 6th fingerprint remains. Even in the heat of midday when all the moss has dried and the chalk lines reappear in powdery relief. Your camera's batteries are holding steady now, but only during the day. Every night, without exception, they drain to 0 within an hour of sundown. The footage always ends the same way, with a few seconds of distorted silence, then a single frame where the well appears deeper than it is, as if its bottom is receding or remembering. You email your supervisor, but the message fails to send. You try again with a hotspot. Nothing. Your phone has service just enough to receive a cheerful ad about hiking insurance, but your outgoing data is sealed like the well. Even the village signal seems confused, circling endlessly, never quite landing. You tell yourself it's a rural glitch. Mountains do strange things to reception. So do ancient regrets. At this point, you begin hearing breathing again. This time, it's not in your equipment, it's in the soil. When you press your ear to the ground, The pulse is subtle, rhythmic, too slow to be mechanical. The ground inhales, then waits, then exhales not air but a distant groan of pressure. It's like lying against the ribs of something trying very hard not to wake up. You stop listening. That's joke number 1. It doesn't help. You reread the letter from 1684. Now, in the quiet of the woods, a line you overlooked becomes impossible to ignore. The water remembers how deep the child was when they stopped being a child. You wonder, is this about drowning? Or transformation? Your nights grow longer. Not because the sun is late, but because you wake earlier and stay up later. You start seeing the handprint even when it's not there. Or perhaps it's always there, just beneath the stone's surface, like bruises on a cold memory. You test a new method. This time you dust the area with fluorescent powder. A harmless trick you've used in caves illuminates contact points. You go to bed early. Leave the camera rolling. Hope for science. At dawn, there are prints again. But not just on the wall. They lead away. Tiny glowing smudges curve outward from the well, as if a child crawled, not climbed into the woods. Hands only. No footprints. No sign of turning back. You follow the trail. It leads to a hollow tree. Wide enough to sit inside if you were foolish. Which you are. You duck in, shining your flashlight at the carved interior. Nothing modern, no initials, no beer cans. Just a strange pattern, overlapping circles and vertical cuts. It looks like a calendar made by someone who doesn't believe time moves forward. You hear humming, just 3 notes, repeating, unpleasantly close. You lurch backward out of the tree. The humming stops. There's a fresh acorn at your feet. Joke number 2, a callback. Enjoy it. You return to the well unsettled. Check the footage. The camera did not malfunction. It captured the handprints forming in real time, one by one, over 5 minutes. No figure visible. But the powder was pressed down, displaced with unmistakable intent. The fingers twitch. One even hesitates. It's as if the thing making them was uncertain about which direction it wanted to go. Outward or back down. There is no reasonable explanation for this. You record your thoughts aloud, trying to steady yourself. Possibly wind pressure interacting with electrostatic residue? No, that's nonsense. You pause. Start over. Behavior consistent with mimicry or trauma. Memory pattern. What am I saying? You stop the recording. You realize something chilling. You've been talking to yourself more than usual. You're not sure when that started. You're not sure you're always the one answering. That's joke number 3. It doesn't land. Another ancient fact for you slipped in like a polite guest in ancient Thrace wells were considered listening places. People believed they could speak their dreams into the water and hear advice or warnings echoed back. Archaeologists have found ceramic tokens at the bottom of some of these wells. Tiny hand-carved figures of children, faceless, limbless, worn smooth by centuries of forgetting. You sleep uneasily that night. You dream of spiral stairs that go neither up nor down, just round and round. In the dream, the handprint is no longer on the stone. It's on your chest. You wake sweating, shirtless. Your hands are clean, but your sternum burns with a cold flush. You check the mirror. Nothing visible until dusk. That's when the shadow appears. Not on your chest, but on your tent wall. Cast from nowhere, a child's silhouette. Not standing, crawling. One hand forward, always reaching. You freeze, breathe shallow, then it speaks. But not in words. In knocks, 3 slow taps from behind the stone wall of the well. Then nothing. You stare at the wall long after the sound ends. There's no door there, just stone. But something has moved inside the well. You shine your light. See only the moss. But this time, it's shaped like a hand pulling down, not pushing up. Later, when you attempt to leave the clearing to hike back to the village, you find the trail looping. Not metaphorically, physically. Your GPS spins. The compass is confident only about spinning. Every direction leads back to the well. It's starting to feel less like a source of water and more like the center of something circular, something ritual. You remember the spirals, the mushrooms, the calendar in the tree. You sit, you wait. At dawn, a new handprint forms. It has 7 fingers. You stop sleeping, at least not on purpose. Instead, you drift. Minutes vanish. Hours flicker. You find yourself in places you don't remember walking to, crouched near the hollow tree, palm pressed to the stone rim, or sitting inside your tent, whispering phrases you don't recall learning. You've started writing them down, these phrases, just in case. One repeats itself across 3 separate pages in your journal. When the sky forgets your name, the well remembers your shape. It doesn't rhyme, it isn't poetry, it just feels old. Like something passed mouth to mouth by firelight until the meaning softened and the fear stayed. You tell yourself this is fatigue. Classic isolation-induced suggestibility. Your professors warned you about this sort of thing. They told stories about field researchers mistaking mineral stains for face carvings, or sleep-deprived graduate students mapping entire lost civilizations out of lichen patterns. You're not immune to those stories, but you also can't explain the print, or why. After the 7th finger appeared, your camera no longer records anything except a still image, the well, your sleeping body, and now a 2nd figure standing behind you, blurry, watching just out of focus. Every time. You haven't seen it with your eyes, but it's always there on camera. And each night it's a little closer. Joke number 1. Haha. It watches kindly. You try speaking to it, polite professional. If you're real, you say aloud, why show yourself like this? Nothing. Then after a beat, a sound not from the well this time, but from the earth behind it. A sound like a long exhale through stone teeth, followed by a drip, then another. You turn your head. Something's leaking from the roots of the tree. Not sap, not water, thicker. It soaks into the moss before you can identify it. It smells like old coins. That's your 2nd mistake tonight. You inhaled. You try the phone again. No service. The battery dies mid-dial. The time blinks, then resets to 5:04. You check your watch. It also reads 5:04. You check your laptop, your recorder, your backup timer, all 5:04. Even the sun pauses, hovering at a weird angle, too low for dusk, too bright for dawn. You don't know how long it lasts. 10 minutes, an hour. Eventually, everything starts again. But you're not sure you did. That's joke number 2. You're welcome. You begin digging near the base of the well. Not with tools, you have none left unbent, but with your hands. You scrape moss away until your fingers find a hidden seam, a break in the stone ring. Carefully, you pry it open. Beneath, there's a hollow cavity lined with scorched bone and ash. Inside, a small doll made of twigs, wrapped in thread. The thread is knotted around 5 tiny, elongated finger bones. You drop it. It doesn't hit the ground. It vanishes. You find it again later beside your pillow. It's moved. 2 of the fingers are now bent, pointing toward the well. There's a real-world precedent for this, you remind yourself. In certain Bronze Age graves, archaeologists found small effigies near the burial sites, often of children wrapped in thread or sinew. Some believe these were protective totems. Others believe they were meant to hold the spirit in place, to weigh it down, to keep it from crawling back. Some researchers still argue whether these dolls served a symbolic function or a practical one. You no longer care about the distinction. The handprint reappears, of course, but now it's not alone. Below it, written in water or memory or something between the two, a short line of symbols forms spirals, vertical slashes, a loop that closes like an eye. You trace them. They match the carvings from the hollow tree, but this time, when you say them aloud, phonetically guessing at the consonants, you feel something in your teeth click. Not painfully, just wrongly. Your next breath sounds like someone else's. You leave the site, or try to. You walk west following the last known trail. You pass the same tree 3 times. You mark it with a red thread from your jacket. You pass it again. The thread is no longer red, osamad. It's darkened. Wetter. As if it remembers rain you didn't walk through. You sit beside the well again. Not because you want to, but because it's the only thing that hasn't moved. This place is no longer a location. It's a repetition. It's a sentence. That's joke number 3. You hear a noise behind you. Turn slowly. There's no one there. But the tent flap is open. The journal is missing. In its place, one page torn cleanly. On it, in your own handwriting, the following. You have always been watching from the bottom of the well. Below it, a faint fingerprint. Not yours. Larger now. The 7th finger has split. There are 8. You are running out of numbers. You wake to birdsong that isn't right. At first it sounds normal, faint, reedy, a high warble in the distance. But then you realize it's not coming from the trees. It's coming from the well. Mimicking birdsong. Not in tune. Not convincingly. Just enough to remind you what above sounds like. You sit up slowly. Something has changed. The air feels denser now. Not humid, compressed. As though the atmosphere itself is gently pushing down, ushering you closer to the stone. Everything around you seems flatter, quieter. You realize you haven't heard the wind in over a day. Even the trees have stilled. You check the well wall. There are now 2 handprints, not side by side stacked. One small, one the size of your own. The bottom one overlaps precisely where your hand had once pressed. You know, because of the faint scar on your ring finger from a glass shard years ago. The scar is visible in the print. It's not metaphor, it's your hand. You don't remember touching it again. You look at your hand. There are 8 fingers. That's not a joke. You count again out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It stops at 5. You count again silently. There are 8. You begin to cry, but not loudly. More like a seep. A leaking from somewhere emotional but long closed. You tell yourself you've been alone too long, you've lost your tether to waking rhythms. That's it. That has to be it. But the well is different now. When you peer into it, the depth has changed. You can't see the bottom, not because of darkness, but because it reflects, like a mirror. And in the reflection there is light, flickering, soft, like dawn breaking on the inside of the world. You reach toward it. You stop yourself. You sit down. Across the clearing, the mushroom ring has spread. It now surrounds not just the well, but your tent. And the tree. And the chalk lines. It has grown into a perfect spiral. From above, if anyone were watching, it might look like an ancient symbol carved into the land. Or an invitation, another real-world note for you in case you need grounding. In prehistoric burial mounds across Europe, spirals often accompany remains carved onto stones etched into bone. Some archaeologists argue they represent celestial cycles. Others say they reflect journeys' inward rituals of descent and return. Some wonder if they were maps or warnings or stories too old to tell. Some researchers still debate whether the carvings were made for the living or for the dead to find their way home. That's your scholarly doubt. You whisper aloud just to test yourself, "I'm still me." The well answers back. Still, it's the first full word you've heard. You should be terrified. Instead, you feel recognized. You take one final step. You decide to spend the night with your hand resting on the stone, not touching the print, just near it, like you're reaching for someone you almost remember. You fall asleep before you mean to, and when you wake it is morning. Bright, real. Your tent is intact. Your camera is full of footage. The chalk line is undisturbed. You breathe and laugh. That's your final mistake. Because on the footage, on every frame you are gone, there is no you in any shot. Only the tent, the well, the trees, and the handprint, now 9 fingers long. And so the well remembers, even if you do not. The moss will grow again. The chalk will wash away. The mushroom ring will fade with the season, then reappear when someone else forgets how to count. And at dawn, always dawn, the print will return. Small again perhaps, or not. Sometimes it's best to start over. Sometimes the stone decides it misses company. You're no longer trapped, you're simply part of the pattern now. A spiral carved in water, a voice in stone. A handprint that never truly dries.